Former chairman of the Jamaica Police Federation and current welfare officer of the Jamaica Constabulary Force JCF, Deputy Superintendent Raymond Wilson is now in hospital following a car crash along the Sir FLORIZEL GLASPOLE highway in Kingston earlier today. Reports are that the Deputy Superintendent was driving along the busy roadway when his vehicle ran off the road. It was reported that the senior officer had to be pulled from the vehicle. Reports are that his injuries are not considered life-threatening. We will bring you more on this story in subsequent newscasts. In other news tonight, opposition spokesperson on education, Dr. Angela Brown-BURKE, says the return to face-to-face classes for some children reaffirms the opposition's position on bringing particularly the younger children back to the classroom as a common sense and a practical approach.
Children were very excited to be out, I mean, they were babbling and talking about what they were doing, meeting their friends, coming out, playing and all of that. And I thought that that was really very good. And it shows what we have been saying, that bringing in particular the younger ones out is really a common sense, practical approach that is to be lauded. In terms of some of the smaller schools that I spoke with, one, they are concerned about just being able to open safely and meeting all the requirements. So even for some that are approved, they are not sure how any additional funding will happen in terms of if they need additional teachers given the student-teacher ratio. They are not sure, or just the class size, they are not sure given the sanitizing protocols if they will have additional resources to be able to hire ancillary staff or to deal with all the additional costs for sanitizers and so on. And some of them reminded me that because they have not been open, for example, the little money that they would have earned from the tuck shop or stuff like that just is not there. Even the money that they would have probably gotten at the start of the school year, collecting that from parents, just has not been there either. And so they are concerned about that and they are not sure what is happening there. For those who have not been approved or haven't heard their names being called or told that they have been approved, they are also concerned about exactly how those decisions are made.
Dr. Brown-BURKE also implored the Education Ministry to make the information used in their decision-making clear and accessible to schools.
The conditions that you're using, the factors, the rubric that you're using to make the decision, make those clear, put them on the website so that schools are able to access them, that schools are able to measure looking at themselves and what needs to happen where they are. Because I've heard some schools say, I see some schools on the list, and if they're on the list, I can't understand why my institution isn't there. And we need to resolve those issues, because what we need is to maintain confidence in the system and in how these decisions are made. So those are some of the concerns. I still get teachers, in particular those who taught during summer school, calling me, coming up to me and saying, listen, we still have not been paid. And I'm calling on the Ministry of Education to treat our teachers as they deserve. They came out during the summer, they taught the children, did what they were supposed to do. And all they keep hearing is that at the end of the month or soon, you will be paid. There are still far too many teachers who have not been paid. And bearing in mind all that has been happening, many of them are parents. Many of them are also children with parents who are senior. And what's happening in Jamaica with the pandemic, they need the resources to be able to help the family and to make sure they take care of business, And I think it is really unfair for the ministry to be so silent and not communicating and not honoring that obligation of paying them.
She also recommended that the Education Ministry provide further explanation on the requirement of 2 additional years of high school.
So a number of persons have contacted me asking what is the position as it relates to the 2 additional years in sixth form. The first thing I want to say is that in principle, I think we would have no problem with 2 additional years. First of all, we need to understand the country that we are in and where many families find themselves. And what I mean by that, there are many families that can't afford to send children to school 2 more years past the fifth form. They just can't, they simply cannot afford to do that. They're going to need, these children are going to need, when they're finished fifth form, to find some kind of employment, even while they try to earn to send themselves to school. So that's one. So the 2 additional years, which now seem to be compulsory, I believe that we need to have a proper explanation as to how education is being approached, and at every step of the way, every level, what is expected in terms of the output and the achievement of our students. Right now, what we do know is that when our students finish fifth form, we still have far too many who do not have 3 subjects leaving school. So who are the ones that are destined for this additional 2 years compulsory?
Dr. Brown-Burke further explained the challenge of affordability for some students required to complete 6th and 7th forms.
So if you are in a traditional school, high school, and you are going to 6th form, the schools are paid $19,000 per student.
Depending on the school.
Depending on the school. But if you are doing that 6th form curriculum at a university or college or another institution, it could be anywhere 3 times that or more that's being paid to these institutions. And so the question would be, why wouldn't it be at the same cost? Why is it that these other institutions are being paid this enormous sum while our schools that have been doing it for so long are only at $19,000? If we identify that the cost to do this is X, then I would believe that all institutions would be paid the same amount. So, I'm very concerned about that. We also don't know how are these institutions chosen.
So is the government paying those institutions?
That's the government paying these institutions to do the program. And so there's still a lot of questions to be asked, and we're still looking at it, gathering information, and listening to the questions being raised by the teachers themselves and by the administrators.
In other news tonight, the People's National Party, PNP, launched their Youth Month activities during a press conference held at their headquarters earlier today. Here is Colleen May with the details.
Opposition leader and People's National Party President Mark Golding during PNP's Youth Month launch today says when the party forms the next government, they will reform the Student Loan Bureau, SLB, eliminating the need for guarantors.
We have also been looking at policies that we think will enhance the prospects and possibilities for young people in Jamaica. That is why we were pleased to announce reforms of the Student Loan Bureau that we would intend to introduce when we form the next government, eliminating the requirement of guarantors of student loans so that no child can be deprived of access to financing for their tertiary education by requirement that they have some credit-worthy guarantor to back their loan. We want to eliminate any structural barriers to persons accessing tertiary education, and that is one of them that we think needs to be abolished. Similarly, we want to make it more friendly and inviting for persons to invest in their own tertiary education by borrowing a student loan, by ensuring that their loan payments are capped at 15% of their monthly income, so that nobody should struggle to service their student loans, and the state takes the burden of excessive loan payments off of our young graduates.
Mr. Golding urges Jamaicans to invest in our children early on in their lives in order to afford them the best future.
With only 1 in 5 achieving the 5 basic subjects at CSEC, which is considered to be an acceptable outcome, a minimum acceptable outcome of the education system. We need to change that, and that requires investing from very early in the lives of our children. They are all bright. We just need to give them the right inputs, nutrition and other important nurturing inputs that will help them and their families achieve a basic level of competence by the time they are ready to go into secondary school. We also see the need to do more for our young people who are not getting all that they should out of the education system and leave school without prospects. Those 4 out of 5, many of whom don't end up currently in any tertiary institution, any training institution, and can't find a job. We need to have a national program for them and to give them mentorship, to give them remedial education, to give them life skills training, and to give them greater prospects to becoming productive citizens. If we ignore them, if we don't invest in them, then we are only feeding the mill of crime and violence in the country. The solution to establishing a more hopeful Jamaica, a more inclusive Jamaica, a more equal Jamaica, a safer and secure Jamaica must be in ensuring that that cohort are given another chance to establish themselves as productive citizens of our country and are not just left on their own to their own devices and the allure of badness and the gun.
Junior spokesperson on education and training, Rasheen Roper-Robinson, implored the government and others to include the youth in their decision-making, especially when it involves them.
We have to be radical, inclusive, collaborative in terms of the decisions that we're going to be making for our young people, the discussions that we're going to be having for our young people. So I know Twitter and the social media sphere is abuzz this morning, with some decisions that have been made for our young people. We can't continue to be disingenuous about creating pathways for our young people, but we don't invite them to the conversations at the table. We're forcing our young people through doors and down paths that we don't know if they want to take those walkways. So when I talk about being radical and inclusive, collaborative and diverse in our engagement and support of our young people, I'm talking about doing things that maybe sound a little crazy. How many of our executive teams, how many of our table discussions have young faces sitting there with us? How many of us have ever asked young people what it is that they want and allow them to be a part of the solutions driving a lot of the problems that are going on or taking place, usurping their happiness and their future at this point in time? I'm calling for us to be revolutionary in our discussions with young people.
Director of Business Development Division at the Jamaica Association for the Deaf, Denise Badro, who received tablets on behalf of students, thanked Mr. Golding for the party's contribution.
Currently, we're doing a device drive, and we want to thank the opposition leader for the People's National Party for this generous donation, which will further our cause to support and empower our deaf students. Currently, we have over 200 students at our 7 schools for the deaf. We have received some devices before, but we're still in need. So we need about 30 tablets, 50 laptops, and about 15 desktop computers. We want to ask our generous donors, corporate and individuals, to give generously so we can empower our deaf children so they can be nation builders.
Reporting from Mellow TV News, I'm Colleen May.